place between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Event security. Radio time.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to FPC Radio Live. It is NFL Week 1 kickoff week. That's right. We have actual, real NFL football in 2 days' time. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers kick off their season against the Dallas Cowboys. And, of course, Sunday and Monday will bring the rest of the Week 1 slate. So we are here to break it all down. We're here to talk to you guys and have a little fun. So in order to do that, it's not just going to be me up here because, well, we would lose listeners at a record pace if it was just me talking. So I'm going to bring in the resident wise, ancient, well, maybe ancient's probably not what I was going for. I was going to do some subtle age recognition, but apparently I skipped over subtle and went right to taking a jab. But I'm going to just drop it right there and say, hello, John. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Ian. You lost me at wise.
Yeah.
Because that is referring that I'm old, which I guess is true. I'm 58, but I feel younger than that. But also wise, I wouldn't use that to, describe me. I'm not the wisest person out there. A wise, you know what, but not necessarily wise.
Hey, it's all right. If we can convince ourselves that we are both wise, then I think we'll be better off for it. No, I mean, we obviously, I'm excited. This week it's September 7th to be exact, which means, again, we got football in just a couple days, actual real football games that count. And at this point, just about every team still has hope except for the Dallas Cowboys because, well, hey, it's the Dallas Cowboys. And let's be real. They don't have hope this week and they don't have really hope for the season. It's funny. I actually saw someone tweet, which I know you'll disagree with, and I disagree wholeheartedly. And this kind of speaks to what the Cowboys have done to people. But someone actually tweeted that no stand-up is actually funny. And I looked, as a Cowboys fan, and I sat and I thought to myself, I'm like, man, that team has really taken a toll on people. And I don't blame them. You're a Cowboys fan for 30 plus years. And, at this point, you don't find comedy funny. And I get it. I understand. I try to put myself in their shoes, but, I just can't do it. No, all kidding aside, the Cowboy season obviously still has hope. We'll talk in a couple weeks and see what's going on. Bucs season obviously still has hope, as I believe they are many people's favorite to head to the Super Bowl in the NFC, and rightfully so. I mean, this is a team that are the defending, almost said Stanley Cup champions. I'm kind of mixing up my sports here a little bit, but defending Super Bowl champions, and they're returning all their starters. Plus, they got that guy, Mr. Tom Brady, under center. So it's going to be fun to watch their season play out and kind of see what happens with them. But we'll get a glimpse this Thursday.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because Dallas's defense a year ago was atrocious. I think they'll be improved this year because that's really the only direction they can go. They can't be worse than they were a year ago. You've got Dak Prescott back, but he's dealt with some injury concerns in training camp with his shoulder. Actually, it's a weird injury for quarterbacks. It's not necessarily shoulder; it's under the armpit. Which my conspiracy theory is: did he hurt that area of his body lifting weights? Because it almost feels like that's where if you're doing bench presses. Not that I'm exactly Arnold Schwarzenegger here, but if you're doing bench presses, it may impact that area. So he hasn't played at all in the preseason, but by all reports, he's going to be fine for Thursday night. But now there's a 99% chance they don't have their best offensive lineman and Zach Martin. It's one thing you need against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is an offensive line because that defense is hellacious. They'll put pressure on Dak Prescott. I would expect Tampa Bay to win this game. Again, all 22 starters are back. The only team in the NFL that drafted for the future, not necessarily for need. And they look like they're going to be ready to rock and roll in week 1.
The funny thing is, too, is their first-round pick, Joe Tryon, looks like he's a NFL-ready pass-rushing stud. So,
exactly. Yeah, just again, what they need, right?
Yeah,
they
exactly.
need another good pass rusher. Well, every quarterback in the NFC was like, oh, God.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, this team clearly won the offseason, and as we know, winning the offseason means nothing. But when you have Tom Brady under center, I think there's a lot more credibility to it. But before we really dive into football, we do talk about other things besides football on
Mm-hmm.
this show, and unfortunately and sadly, actor Michael K. Williams passed away yesterday. He was found
Mm-hmm.
unconscious or dead in his apartment. I'm not going to speculate as to what happened. There was one report where there was drug paraphernalia found, and unfortunately, we know how terrible drugs can be, and I hope that's not the case. I mean, regardless, no matter how it happened, it's a sad time because by all accounts, and anyone who's ever enjoyed his shows, which I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
we can go down the list. Obviously, The Wire is the first thing that comes to people's mind. You talked about Boardwalk Empire,
Mm-hmm.
The Night of, if anyone's seen that more recent HBO program of the last 10 years. There's just so many examples of his ability on full display in so many different either TV shows, whether it's a brief stint, a brief appearance, or a key role in a long series. He's always really delivered and delivered at such a high level. I mean, and we haven't even gotten to his personal life, which by all accounts, if you pay attention to the people that are speaking about him now, he was one of the good guys, one of the guys that
Mm-hmm.
would take the time out of his day to do whatever. Obviously, very charitable, very generous with his time and money. So, very sad to see that at only 54 years old.
Yeah, it really is sad. I mean, as I said earlier, I'm 58. When I see people dying that are younger than me, it's kind of jarring. I get these updates on Facebook when someone in my high school graduating class dies, and I'm like, oh my God, that person's
Mhm.
forever young to me because that's the last time I had contact with them. Yeah, this was jarring news. Anytime you hear of anybody that age, who you would think, is in a great place, is healthy, whatever the case may be, and now they're gone. And we'll talk about a talented person. I mean, anybody can kind of mix all the different things that he was able to do. Is incredibly talented, right? Whether you're
Mhm.
one of the best character actors out there without question, and it's just a sad story. It really is.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I feel like anytime obviously a celebrity or musician dies, there's always for the most part there's always some fluff that goes about and around that person.
Hmm.
Some of the times that some of the things they've done in the past kind of get overlooked, and rightfully, look, that's not the time for it. Uh,
Right,
in the case of Michael K, there is nothing that people are glossing over when it comes to him.
right.
Um,
Yeah, never heard a bad thing
no,
about him. I mean, this is different than say when Kobe Bryant died a year and a half ago. There were some out there that were like, well, I'm not going to shed a tear because of what Kobe
sure.
was off the court or allegedly off the court, whatever the case may be. But look, when anyone dies, especially you know at that age, it has to be jarring for anyone to know that we're all mortal at some point.
And look, I mean, it's I sometimes this will inspire you to go watch and celebrate this person's life. I mean, I know I can imagine uh the Wire's viewership on HBO Max
Hmm.
has skyrocketed, and rightfully so. Look,
Right.
if you haven't seen that show before, I highly recommend it. It's a show that I loved at the time, and certainly am now a little bit more inclined to go back and watch through it again. I mean, I've been kind of intending on doing that for a while, to be honest with you, but this might, kind of really kick me into gear when it comes to that, because again, it was a great show, and he was a huge reason why. I mean, we see we see the clips on social media all the time, all the gifs, all the memes, and now it takes on a different meaning, because the next time you see that in the context of using it as uh, uh, a comment on something else, you're going to sit there and be like, oh man, I can't believe he's gone already. And it's like, at 54, that's again, it's very young, relative to life expectancy. So,
Yeah, you would think someone, obviously, the life expectancy, it's kind of strange, isn't it, when we talk about celebrities,
mhm.
because they have more money. They should be able to live longer lives because, in theory, they should take care of themselves better. They should eat better and all of that stuff. So you see some of these celebrities like Betty White's 98. or whatever, But then there's also a lot of the trappings that come with it where, they perish at a very young age. I'm not saying what killed Michael K. Williams, if he died of natural causes, whatever the case may be, but I go back to Philip Seymour Hoffman, who it was 8 years ago, died younger than 50 years of age from drug abuse. And you're like, here's a guy who I think was one of the 2 or 3 most talented actors of his generation, who had a lot of demons. So you get really young, celebrities dying prematurely, or they live forever. It's kind of a weird combination. But yeah, I mean, I think when most people, when they talk about The Wire, is it's one of the 3 greatest shows in modern TV history in terms of dramas, right? There's always The Wire, Breaking Bad, and The Sopranos. Those are like the 3 that everyone seems to put together as like the 3 best dramas of, I don't know, the last 20, 25 years. That seems to be the consensus.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I've seen The Shield thrown in there as well.
Yeah.
Kind of, those trend-setting shows from the late 90s, early 2000s, which really set the tone for what we know now as dramatic television and everything like that. Because obviously, Michael K. Williams was a big part of the HBO family. I already mentioned Boardwalk Empire. Not sure if you've seen The Night Of, but the miniseries, which was really, really good. And, it kind of portrays a criminal trial of someone who was wrongly accused of a crime. And he plays a role as an inmate and kind of a mentor to this person. I don't want to give too much away. 1, because I don't want to mess up the details, and 2, I do highly recommend the show because I thought it was really good. Did you ever see that on HBO?
I never saw it. It's on my list of things I have to watch. There's a bunch of them at this point, because the thing is, Ian, there was about a 5-year period where I was covering so much in the terms of politics and sports that I had like no other time to consume all this stuff. I'm always amazed at the guys that, cover sports exclusively, how much they really are into, call it pop culture or art or whatever, that they even have the time to consume all of this stuff. There was like I said, a 5-year period where it was like politics and sports, and that's it, because I was doing both things when I was at Herald Radio and then writing about it. So I was like consumed with it. I probably took the advice of Tom Brady and lived, drank, ate, and did everything when it comes to my profession. But I do have a lot of catching up to do on something like that, and that's one of those on there. And it's just amazing too now, because I'm being older than you. It's like the 9th time we've mentioned that. But the best stuff growing up for me was, growing up, being in my early 20s, whatever, all the way through. I'm still growing up. But movies were the best form of art, right? And now it seems to me that television or streaming have kind of taken that over, right? I mean, it's just like The Sopranos. I would watch The Sopranos, every week and go, this is better than stuff I see at the movie theater now. And you can even take the top 2 or 3 films in a given year, and The Sopranos can measure up to that. It's like they caught up to, and I think maybe even surpassed what's at the theater, if people even go to the theater anymore. So, and I think that, The Wire is a big part of that, and it's something that, should be applauded.
Well, and if you think about it too, I mean, before, again, we go back to the late 90s, early 2000s. Prior to that, there really was no outlet for shows like this. I mean, shows that really had the budget of a small movie that just wasn't the case. I mean, first of all, most of these dramas were on network television.
Exactly.
It wasn't too long ago that the show Lost basically broke the plan when it comes to pilots and network television. They're absurdly costly. And then I say costly in terms of just monetary. I mean, obviously it was a great pilot and certainly set the tone for how great that show was. But it was 2004, and that was still pretty unique, and still is pretty unique when it comes to network television. Now, with The Sopranos, with again, all these other shows that came out on HBO and some of these pay for network television, all of a sudden you're getting movie style budgets in television shows. And this stigma too, and I want to the stigma of actors, real seasoned actors in television has gone away. Obviously I'm not in the business, but there's always that well, you're an actor, you're a movie actor. You don't want to, you're not going to do TV.
Exactly.
Well, guess what? TV now, depending on what it is, again, you're going to an HBO or Showtime or one of these companies that have a huge studio-ish budget. Television is where it's at because, well, guess what? You have more time to tell the story. Now, movies are great, but you're jam packing everything into 2 or 3 hours.
Mhm.
Sometimes, you gotta make cuts. Well, a series, you get 8 episodes. Say conservatively, you get 8 episodes a season, and then that's lowballing it. Really, that's 8 hours. Again, let's keep the numbers whole and simple. I understand that most of these are 52 minutes or 43. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
you
Yeah,
get
exactly. Yeah, we're rounding off.
exactly. Make it simple for our slow to catch up brains
Well,
here.
Well,
But-
no, it's true because you look at my favorite actors growing up were Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, Al Pacino, Jack
Mhm.
Nicholson. That to me is the Mount Rushmore of actors of my generation. Not that I'm as old as them, but when I started following movies, they were the 4 best actors. And Hoffman has been on TV now, although he's retired. Al Pacino several times was on some great
Did-
HBO movies.
Did you know Dustin
De Niro
Hoffman
even
was in
now?
Star Wars?
He was in Star Wars. I mean, that was just that's the reason. I went to see Star Wars way later because I'm not a big Star Wars fan. But I said I have to go. Well, I can't say I'm not a fan if I didn't see it, right? So I went to see it, and I was disappointed. But I was more disappointed that Dustin Hoffman wasn't in there. I thought he was going to be in the movie, so I was
why
kind
you
of
can't
pissed
believe
off.
everything Seinfeld says.
You can't. No, I learned that at a very young age. But yeah, these great actors are now in shows that are produced exclusively for HBO. Look, The Irishman, Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
My favorite director of all time, along with Stanley Kubrick. The Irishman was underwritten by Netflix, and it was available on Netflix, and you could see it at the theater, obviously, which I still think is the best place to go see a movie.
Yep.
But now you can expand it, and it's more accessible to people, and you can monetize it in different ways. Because look, the way movie theaters are now, especially with the pandemic, people don't want to go sit in a closed-in dark room with strangers for 3 hours. It's not it's not as sexy as it was, say, 20, 30 years ago. So now it's done differently, which I find pretty amazing. But the talent is still there, and now the budgets are still there.
And on a side note, just because I did do this on Friday, actually, I went to go see the latest Marvel movie. I went at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You know how many people were in the theater? 5.
Great. Yeah, no,
5.
I always used to go. Yeah, because my shift at the Herald was so early.
Yeah.
Like that, I would go to the movie. Like I would go before noon if they had it, 11:30, because it's actually cheaper before noon. And then after that, I would go have a nice lunch, and it was a great day. Yeah, and there'd be no one in the theater. You don't need other people in the theater. Sometimes for comedies, it's good to have some people in there, but some people just laugh at the wrong things, or at least I think they laugh at the wrong things, or they just talk or whatever. I love sitting in a movie theater with no one in it. It's awesome. I mean, because you don't have people talking, 3 chairs behind you that you want to punch.
I agree, and for the most part, there are certain situations. Now, again, if you're a Marvel fan like I am, like going and seeing things like Infinity War and Endgame in the theater, that was a great experience because again, it's just it's a different type of feel for certain movies. Like, obviously going to see, if you're a big Star Wars fan, going to see the new Star Wars movie was always, kind of a big deal. Certainly if you are one that was a Star Wars fan waiting for the first remake back in 1999. And again, when people's imaginations were still believing that, it was actually going to capture the original. But certain experiences, you want to see in the theater, but I'm with you, man. For the most part, I just want to watch the movie. I'm kind of like that with sports too. Like I tell people all the time, don't invite me to your Super Bowl party because
I'm with you on that.
I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to know about your life. I don't care about your kids. I just don't. I just want to watch the game. And I don't.
Yeah, we can do that at a different time.
Yeah, exactly.
We can go another time and have dinner and break break it down like we're analyzing film. But I'm the same way. There's very few people that I'll watch a sporting event with. I can be really annoying to watch a baseball game with because in my heart and soul, that's my favorite sport.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love football. I love basketball. I love them all. In my inside of my soul is baseball is my favorite sport. I'm frustrated with it. But with watching a baseball game with me can be frustrating because I kind of act like a manager and I'm constantly like going on and on and on, and trying to talk about well, that should have been scored an error, not a hit, and it's like watching the Red Sox yesterday was frustrating. They looked like the bad news Bears, but yeah. So but I'm with you. I'll be watching Packers Saints at 4:25. I know you'll be watching Patriots Dolphins at 4:25. I just like to watch it alone, and I can comprehend what's going on rather than have some person who's never watched football screaming, 8 feet away from me for no apparent reason.
Or just talking about something that has nothing to do with football.
Right.
That
exactly. Yeah.
Like, again, I just don't care. Like, do you think it's rude? Sure. Whatever. I don't care. I like
kind of like when it's like George when he went into the stranger's house and watched Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yeah.
He wanted to watch the film, and the people that actually lived there were trying to have a conversation, and he told them that, if they could be quiet, he was into this movie.
Anyone who was around me during my UMass days and living out there, and whenever we used to watch, I was out there during the concurrent runs of both Lost and 24, where at a certain point they were one was on Monday, the next one was on Tuesday every week. So we would get together and whatnot. And I have zero tolerance policy for talking or conversing during the episode, to the point where I would rudely, and I say rudely because I'm proud of how I did this, I would pause the program. I would turn to whatever person that was talking. I'd be like, look, there's the door. See yourself out. I don't care who it was.
This is why you're alone right now.
Yeah,
probably explains the same of me as well. That's why we get along. We're both loners, and we probably both have some psychopathic tendencies.
Yeah, well, you know what? Now that you say that out loud, it actually kind of makes sense. But hey, I'm happier that way, because guess what? I get to watch my shows and my sports in peace and silence. No, I again, we started this conversation talking about Michael K. Williams, and again, it's sad that he's no longer going to be able to provide us with just great performances from here on out. And it's a shame. So I do want to shift gears though, because I we only have about 20 minutes left, and I do want to talk about some football things, because we had that coming up here this week. Mark Andrews, Ravens tight end, signed a pretty big extension last night. Nice birthday gift, $56 million over 4 years. That kind of puts him right in the ballpark of guys like Travis Kelce and George Kittle. Yes, there we go.
Yeah, George Kittle. Generally, Kittle and Kelce are considered the two best tight ends, and I'm not going to argue against that. I think they're the two best tight ends. Don't you think Rob Gronkowski wishes he was born like 7 years later?
Yeah, him and Kelce are the same age. People forget that.
Isn't that amazing?
That's
amazing.
Incredible.
I mean, because Gronk came into the league at like barely 21, and Kelce I think was 24, and Gronk right away, you know, you could see was going to be awesome. I mean, his second year, 2011, to me is still the greatest season ever by a tight end. He had 17 touchdown receptions. He was
you
could not deal with him.
Too. I mean, he was a
great blocker. Yeah. He's the best tight end I've ever seen. I mean, I'll make a case Tony Gonzalez had a better career because he played forever, never missed games, set all sorts of records, but Gonzalez couldn't block like Gronk. Gronk is a freak, but, if he had been born later, he wouldn't have had the opportunity to play with Brady so long, although Brady would still be around playing somewhere at the age of 60. But, just thinking of that, because Andrews is a nice tight end, right? But we're talking about $14 million a year. Now, the salaries are out there because the cap is going to go up significantly over the next few years. I mean, this year it went down because of what happened last year with the pandemic, and you weren't able to sell tickets, and that's still a big part of creating revenue for the NFL. But with the new TV deals, I mean, the cap is going to go up to probably 210, 220 next year, and the year after 250. I mean, we may be looking at a salary cap of $300 million within the next 5 years, and that's not being hyperbolic. So if you sign a guy long term, it sounds like a lot of money now, but in the end, it's not. That's why even these quarterback contracts look outrageous now, but in 3 or 4 years, they're not going to be.
Kyle Senra brings up a question. He asked, whether Austin Hooper still make more than Andrews, and no, I believe total value. There's no one higher than Kittle and Kelce, but then there's Mark Andrews. When it comes to average per year, I believe Andrews is third as well, behind Kittle and Kelce, and then of course just above the new duo of Patriots tight ends at 12.5. So you're right though. I mean, money is going to go up, so you got to anticipate that. they're going to get, it's a premier position in the league. And look, when you look at the Ravens, you're talking about their number 2 pass catcher, not just tight end. We're talking pass catcher. Like he had as many receptions as Marquise Brown did a year ago, and he only trailed Marquise Brown in yards and touchdowns. So obviously a very important piece to the Ravens puzzle, and he played a huge role in Lamar Jackson's MVP season in 2019. So
was it long ago that a lot of these tight ends didn't want to be called tight ends? Remember Jimmy Graham?
Yeah,
even on his Twitter page,
Jimmy Graham isn't a tight end. He can't block. He can't catch.
No.
I know Kyle's probably steaming right now listening to us talk about Jimmy Graham.
He could catch. In his day, he was a weapon, obviously. Yeah, sometimes. I mean, he was kind of a guy that at times looked like he was going to be great, and at times he looked like he didn't really look like he'd be playing on a football field. But there was a time where they considered tight ends because the salary is so different, and if you were franchised, you get the average of the top 5 at your position, and that would bring the numbers down incredibly. But it's a great weapon to have, especially, you just look at the type of athletes these guys are. You're talking 6'5", 6'6", 260. I mean, that's like a guy that was an offensive lineman, 20 years ago. That'd be like the size of a offensive tackle 20, 25 years ago. Now it's a tight end. I mean, Gronk, I always maintain Gronk could have 15, 20 pounds of muscle on and been an all-pro offensive lineman, a tackle. In fact, the last Patriot Super Bowl, a lot of what he was doing was a lot of blocking. He also had some big games in the postseason, as we remember, in Kansas City, and then caught the big pass in the Super Bowl over the Rams to set up the game-winning score. So I mean, these guys they're freaks. Guys they're power forwards in the NBA, or old school power forwards in the NBA. Not now. Power forwards in the NBA now are 6'11" and can shoot threes.
Well, and the funny thing is too now is Gronk slimmed up a little bit. Obviously the year off, and jumping into the TB12 method full force was definitely a good thing for him, because look, it's prolonged his career to the point where, look, we talk about Kelsey and Kittle as being the 2 best tight ends in the league. Only up until the Bucs win the Super Bowl. Then all of a sudden Gronk is now the best all-pro tight end in the league, because whatever you got to do to denigrate Tom Brady's accomplishments. But
right, of course,
but he's still Well, the reality of it is Gronk's still an elite player, and you know what? If you're going to tell me, okay, which in a clutch situation, well, I would. It's hard not to take Gronk in a lot of these situations, because at the end of the day, he's still a superb blocker. And we saw that with the Bucs. And honestly, I thought that was going to be not his primary focus, but I think that was going to be one of his strengths, regardless of what he did pass catching. But I thought, especially towards the end of the season, he really started to find his footing again and his legs. And I think you're going to see quite a bit out of him this year, to the point where people might be saying, like, wow, is Gronk right back up there in that mix as the best tight end in the league? Well, we'll find out. I mean, it's going to be tough to match the numbers that, say, Travis Kelce puts up, just because of, well, I mean, there's a lot of people to catch the ball in Tampa Bay. So, but we'll see. And it's going to be fun. I think he's going to be pretty solid for the Bucs this year. But if you're the Ravens, Mark Andrews isn't just, a depth guy for you. Whereas Gronk, I don't want to call him just a depth guy, because that's not the case. But, the Bucs have some players around them. Like I said before, with the Ravens, that's it. Marquise Brown is your leading receiver.
He's the guy,
Mark Andrews. And
I mean, they've drafted some capital at wide receiver, and they need to have those guys step up. And Mark Andrews is someone I always root for. Fellow diabetic, he's type 1, I'm type 2. But I think he's constantly testing his sugar levels on the sideline. He's got a pump. To play at that level with diabetes, which now is not a death sentence like it was years ago. It's very manageable. In fact, a lot of diabetics get healthier because they eat right and they exercise. And obviously, he's an NFL player. He's in supreme shape. But this is interesting. They needed to shore him up. At some point, they're going to have to address the quarterback and give him a long-term contract. He came out the same year that Josh Allen did, and Josh Allen has made his money. pretty soon, I think you're going to see Lamar Jackson getting a huge contract as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has 2 years left on his deal right now.
Yeah.
Andrews was entering the final year of his rookie contract. And other not so surprising news: the Texans. Tyrod Taylor is the guy. Um, again, what a situation for David Culley to walk into as a rookie, advanced age head coach in the NFL.
Yeah.
His first job as I mean, look, I think taking the job, I think he had to understand a little bit of what was going on, because I believe the Deshaun Watson stuff was just starting to come out. So there was some insight to that. Now, again, how much he knew about the eventual trade of DeAndre Hopkins is one thing, but this is a guy who a year ago would have walked into a situation where you had Deshaun Watson, J.J. Watt, and DeAndre Hopkins. Now, all three of those guys will not be there week one. Well, Deshaun Watson will be. He's just not playing, and he's not going to play anytime soon, because this is a situation where, well, if they had the ability to do so, they would just, take him off the roster, but they can't. They have to basically carry him on the roster,
right,
for the entire season. Depending on, if something happens to come down. But it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, good for Tyrod Taylor, who, unfortunately had an opportunity to start last year, but due to that medical mishap with the Chargers team doctor, was out at the beginning of the season, and deservedly so. Justin Herbert held on to the job. You're not going to take the job away from him just to honor some time-honored tradition of not, giving away spots due to injury. Well, no, I mean, Justin Herbert kind of made it hard for them to make that decision to move away from him. But, unfortunately for Tyrod, he's kind of bounced around, and this is yet another opportunity for him to, we'll see, because even with those guys that I mentioned before, the Texans still went 4-12 last year. And I've said this many, many, many times before. I will never, ever believe in the Texans until they are sitting there on the podium lifting the Lombardi Trophy. I don't care. I don't care I don't care if they go 17-0. I will still pick them to lose every single game of the playoffs, because I just don't believe in them. And this season is certainly not heading in the right direction.
No, they're probably the worst team in football. I actually take that back. They are the worst team in football. I know they are, because I have a draft every year where 4 of us get together and we, do a snake draft, and we each take 8 teams. Well, the last team left, which was the 32nd pick, which I had, was the Texans. So they're going to obviously be the worst team in football. They may win 2 games if they're fortunate. I mean, with Deshaun Watson, they weren't very good last year, and he's a great quarterback. And you get the feeling with David Culley that he almost feels a little bit like ML Carr in the 96-97 season with the Celtics. It's like, here, we're going to hire you. Just go ahead and lose. We'll get the first pick. We'll get the top quarterback that comes out, and then we'll trade Deshaun Watson for a boatload if we're able to. I'm expecting Deshaun Watson to get traded, whether it's during the season, I don't know. And we also have to figure out what happens with all these lawsuits. But in terms of what happens on the football field, what Commissioner Goodell is going to come down with in terms of a suspension, I would think it's going to be 6-8 games at the minimum, somewhere in there. So Deshaun Watson probably won't even be a factor in 2021. But after that's cleared up and he serves the suspension and these lawsuits are finalized, he's obviously a great quarterback, and they'll get a boatload for him, whether it be from, we hear, the Eagles, the Dolphins, whoever, because, I do think he's a top flight quarterback. Although this may be tough selling to your fan base, that we're trading, 6 future draft picks for this guy. Although in some of these places, it doesn't even matter. It's like, who cares what the guy does off the field? He's a great quarterback. That's the mentality that, many of these markets have.
Yeah, I mean, and look, for the most part, I don't necessarily disagree with that, because, look, short of, I don't want to get, say the wrong thing here, but look, I think far too much is put on players' actions, positive or negative, off the field. Now, obviously, there's exceptions. If you're, doing fairly violent things, all that stuff, you probably don't deserve the opportunity to play in the NFL. But I think there's, like you said, there's going to be a team out there that are going to say, you know what, the risk is worth the gamble. And a desperate team might look at that and say, look, this is an opportunity to get a franchise type quarterback. Now, again, like you said, this doesn't look like it's going to get resolved anytime soon. I've even seen people suggest that discipline won't come until next season, in which case you're talking about a year and a half, he gets a 6 or 8 game suspension, year and a half without playing football.
I know.
All
That's
of a
not
sudden,
easy.
yeah. And even the most desperate team out there for a quarterback isn't going to pay the price that the Texans want. So until the Texans, bring that price down, I don't see Deshaun Watson getting moved. I don't think that they're necessarily motivated right now to trade him, because I feel like they want to see what happens and how this all plays out. But at the end of the day, I think this is, it's just going to be a situation we're going to talk about all season, because he may not be playing, but he's going to be there, and people are going to talk about him. And every time the Texans lose, they're going to be a part of the situation. And look, they get the first overall pick. Guess what? All offseason, you're talking about the Texans, and what do they do? Do they move on from Deshaun Watson? Do they use that first overall pick on a quarterback? Yada yada yada, all that stuff. So again, another interesting storyline to watch, just because again, you're talking about one of the premier young quarterbacks in the league. And, it'd be a shame, but deservedly so, if what he's been accused of is true. It would be a shame if he never played again in the NFL. But like I said, I mean, given the circumstances, if what happened was true, then it would be deserved, and it would be his own damn fault. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, if the discipline doesn't come down till next year, then you're looking a year and a half, 2 years away from the sport. In some sense, you want to always allow someone to earn a living. If he did what he's being accused of doing, then that's an issue. Also, the league is so image conscious. Maybe they believe if he's away for 2 years, when he comes back, it won't be as big a story. Although, there's a lot of talk radio. There's ESPN and Fox Sports 1 that will talk about anything for months. See Deflategate. And so this is what, the league will have to deal with. But yeah, he's a brilliant quarterback, and it's just so unnerving when you hear it from anyone, but he always seemed like one of the good guys. I mean, he donated his first check with the Texans to some woman who worked at the stadium, who lost her house during the hurricane back in 2017. And he gave her his first game check. He just seemed like a really good guy, but we heard stories of athletes who appear to be very nice and charming and all this other stuff, and then have some dark secrets that we'd rather not know about. But when we find out about it, it does change our impression of those players.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's worth letting it play out and see what happens before we jump to any conclusions. But right now, early on, it doesn't. It's not looking great for Deshaun Watson. And look, now in back-to-back seasons, it looks like the league's leading passer is not going to be there week 1 and potentially the entire season. Obviously, last year, Jameis Winston, or the year before, Jameis Winston led the league in passing yards with over 5,000. He didn't start a single game last year with the Saints. And last year, Deshaun Watson was the leading passer with like 4,800 and change. So just a kick under 5,000 yards passing. And, as of week 1, he will not be there. So at the end of the day, it's going to be something that we're going to be talking about for some time. We're not going to get a conclusion to this for a while. It's just going to be a point of discussion pretty much every week. And as long as the Texans keep losing or winning, either way, there's no winning scenario here for the Texans, because if they win, well, it's about Deshaun Watson. What do you do with him? Or if they're losing, well, it's about Deshaun Watson, and what do you do with them? So, but what we're going to do, John.
It also doesn't appear that there's a generational quarterback coming out this year like there was last year with Trevor Lawrence. So
I thought you were going to say Mac Jones.
Good old Mac.
Yeah, good old Mac.
Now that I get to call him Mac instead of Matt.
Yeah.
The thing is that there was an old actor that I think was in North Dallas 40, Mac Davis. That's where I get confused sometimes. So, I'm old. I get confused. But no, I think Mac's going to be just fine this year. I don't know where I am. Yeah. Uncle Leo.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. Look, we'll obviously dive into more about Mac Jones and the Patriots, throughout the week and subsequent weeks and all that stuff. But it's going to be exciting, I think, just to get this season going, which happens in just over a day and a half. So until then, though, we'll be back tomorrow to talk some more nonsense and, of course, hopefully not bore you to death. By the looks of our viewers, it looks like we at least have a few still straggling around. I don't know if it's just Kyle and then all the devices I'm logged into watching at the same time to boost the numbers, but that might be the case. Anyways, give us a follow on Twitter at FPC Radio Live. I am at IGLEN31, and of course, give John a follow at JohnStap25. It's right there up on the screen. Actually, no, it's not on the screen. I lied. It's there on the tweet, though. Give us a follow, and we will talk to you tomorrow.